So hello guys, and welcome to another video. And obviously, for quite a while now, there has been a lot of discussion about the Switch 2. A lot of people feel that it's gonna be announced any second now. But before it is inevitably announced within the next few months, or maybe even few weeks, it could be very soon, I wanted to discuss something that not a lot of people have talked about with the Switch 2, and that is how they'll handle Nintendo Switch Online. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Nintendo's going to keep most of their services on the next console, because they have said in the past that Nintendo accounts will work the same way in the future. Like, they just want to continue that same service in the future and just add on to it and add even more benefits and things to it. Like, there was that one chart they posted, like, quite a while ago that showed that they want to continue building off of their infrastructure with Nintendo accounts. So I think it's safe to say that most things are gonna stay fairly similar, but I do think there is a lot of room for improvement, because over the past few years I have kind of criticized Nintendo's online service, specifically with retro games. And with retro games, that's mostly what I'm going to be talking about today. And I think that's one area of Nintendo Switch Online that probably needs the most improvement, I would say. And while it has been getting better since it originally dropped way back in 2018, I still think there's a lot of things they can do to make it better, because I still think it's far from being a perfect service. There's still a lot of issues with it that I feel like need to be resolved. And yeah, I think the Switch 2 launching next year gives them a lot of opportunities to fix some of these issues. But one thing that I wanted to mention first is the fact that I think they'll probably keep the apps in all of the games and transfer all of the save data from Nintendo accounts over to the new console. I don't think they're getting rid of any of the stuff that they already have. So I think that would definitely be really disappointing if they like reboot the service again. I know I mentioned before like how unlikely that is, because Nintendo wants to continue adding benefits to Nintendo accounts, but man, I really hope they don't do that again, because between the Wii and the Wii U, they completely overhauled the service and made it so you'd have to buy those games again. Same with the 3DS, and then same with the Switch, because with the Switch, they completely redid the whole system. So I really hope that won't happen with the Switch 2. I hope they'll just carry everything over from the Switch and just improve it. And I feel like that's probably going to be the case, like with everything that I've mentioned before. So I think this is probably like already basically confirmed at this point, like especially with like how Nintendo has been kind of handling things with Switch Online. I don't think we're going to see any of those games be taken away anytime soon. So I think that's probably the least of our concerns right now. But other things that they could do with the Switch 2, like specifically, because I feel like there could possibly be some new consoles that they could add that are exclusive to the Switch 2. I mean, eventually, like, the Switch 2 is going to be like the only console that Nintendo will make games on, like in a few years from now, like after they end support for the Switch. But I feel like there's going to be like some exclusive ones that might launch early in the Switch 2's life. Like, I think DS is definitely possible, because there is rumored to be some features where you could do remote play with the Switch 2, like the Switch 2, and I'm not sure, there might have been like some patents that like had like some remote play thing. I'm not sure if that was true or not, or if I'm just misremembering something, but I thought there was something about remote play, or cast, where you could basically cast it over to like a TV, so basically kind of like a new version of like a dock, basically, where you could actually like play the game kind of like a Wii U. If they do that, DS games could work really well, because you could play it both like on the TV and in handheld. And even if they don't do that, I feel like there still are some workarounds that they could do. Like, they could have like a gyro kind of pointer thing for some games, and then make some games handheld only. I know that would be a little weird, and seems like something Nintendo wouldn't necessarily do, but I think Nintendo could possibly get DS games onto the service in some way. Like, almost all of the Nintendo Virtual Console, like, consoles are, like, available on the Switch through Switch Online, except for the DS. So I feel like DS is inevitable at some point, because they have re-released DS games in, like, that similar way before, so I think DS games are definitely possible. GameCube games, while they seem unlikely at the moment due to all of the remakes and remaster we've been getting, but they could possibly add it years down the line, and I feel like same goes for Wii games. Because I feel like eventually it could work. Like, with the GameCube games we've been getting now, it kind of seems like a thing for like late in the Switch's lifespan to like release these now, because the GameCube extension to Nintendo Switch Online might be a bit too much right now, so just releasing those games individually kind of makes the most sense for them. But like a few years from now, like 3, 4, 5 years from now, I think it would definitely make sense. And with the Switch 2, I feel like large file sizes might not be as much of a problem, since the rumored like models are like 256 gigabytes. So I don't think, like, in GameCube games are like 1 gigabyte each. So I think it could possibly work. It might be a thing where you'd have to download them individually rather than all of them being preloaded. So yeah, I think it's still possible, but probably not close to when the Switch 2 launches. Then another kind of funny one is the Virtual Boy, but I'm not sure if Nintendo would do it. Recently, Miyamoto mentioned that there was an emulator made for the Nintendo Museum to run Virtual Boy games on the Switch. So it's definitely possible to run Virtual Boy games on the Switch. I mean, like, the Virtual Boy probably isn't that hard to emulate. I mean, I can emulate it on my PC pretty easily, and I have before. So getting it to run on the Switch, and then by extension the Switch 2, probably isn't that hard. Honestly, they might even add Virtual Boy to the base Switch. So I think Virtual Boy is possible, but I'm not sure if Nintendo would be willing to add it because of how much of a failure that console was, like, looking back and everything. And Nintendo doesn't necessarily care that much about preserving their history and allowing people to play some of their weirder, wackier games. So I think it's really just Nintendo, like, Nintendo deciding not to add it. I think that's really the only thing holding back a Virtual Boy Nintendo Switch Online app. But there's also the possibility for some, like, Sega consoles to be added as well, since we have the Genesis. Like, they could add the Master System, Saturn, Dreamcast. I think that would be really cool. Like, we get some more Sega consoles on there. I'm not sure how far they would go with it, but I think that would be nice to see, because, like, there are a lot of games on those systems that haven't been re-released. So I think that would definitely be a great addition to the service. Even if they might be a little more kind of, like, expensive. They might be added to, like, a higher tier or something like that, but yeah. And then there's maybe even the possibility, I'm saying, like, years down the road here, there's even the possibility for 3DS games. I know I sound absolutely insane saying that, but hear me out. 5 to 7 years from now, the 3DS will be considered retro, like the Game Boy Advance. And its library would be perfect to port over if they can get DS games to work. Like, there are so many great 3DS games that really need to be re-released. Ludicrous. But I think that would be amazing to see 3DS games added at some point. I mean, Nintendo 64 games were added to the Wii service only a few years after the Nintendo 64 was obsolete. So I don't think it's entirely impossible for 3DS games to be added at some point. Like, I really hope Nintendo does it. Like, just maybe, like, sometime, like, either very late this decade or early next decade, like, sometime fairly late into the Switch 2's lifespan. Maybe that's when they'll add it, but I'll have to see. I mean, like, if it was a perfect world, they should, like, port over the 3DS games now. But I like, knowing Nintendo, they probably wouldn't do it for another few years if they were ever considering re-releasing 3DS games in that fashion. But yeah. And the second major thing I wanted to discuss about, like, retro games on the Switch 2 is actually making it accessible to people outside of the subscription service. Subscription services are way too prevalent nowadays, and many people might not be willing to pay for these games or play these games if they are required to pay $20 or $50 a year to access it. So I feel like the solution is actually kind of creating a middle ground between Virtual Console and Nintendo Switch Online, where you could actually allow people to buy the games individually. The apps could basically work like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's DLC, where it could still be unlocked with the subscription, but would also be accessed through individual payments. And basically, with the apps, when you download them, it wouldn't contain any games if you don't have the subscription. But also, if you don't have the subscription, you could buy them individually for them to pop up in the app. And basically, here are the prices that I think each of the games could be. Like, there could be $2.99 for NES and Game Boy, $4.99 for SNES, Virtual Boy, if they add that in GBA games, $5.99 for Genesis games, since I guess it would be a little more for, like, the license and everything. $7.99 for Nintendo 64 and DS games, $14.99 if they ever add GameCube games or 3DS games, and $19.99 if they ever do Wii games. And making these games, like, purchased individually, like, alongside a subscription service, would help to preserve these games if Nintendo Switch Online ever ends, like, if support ever ends, like, far in the future, or if any of the games are delisted. Because I think there's definitely the possibility at some point for some of these third-party games to be delisted, because it's happened on the Virtual Console before. So, like, once these licenses run out, like, these games would be completely inaccessible to people. So, I feel like they should give people the option to purchase these games so they can have it on their system forever. And the next thing I wanted to discuss is more quality of life features, because there's definitely some that would be welcome on the retro library. So, one thing that I really wish they would add is the ability to turn off the default border. If the Switch 2 has an OLED screen, having a permanent border for these games could cause burn-in. And it already has for the Switch OLED, which I think is kind of ridiculous. Like that this is permanent and everything. So I really hope they add the option to turn it off sometime in the future. Or they could even add the option for different borders as well. Like, they could basically, maybe with the platinum or gold points, they could sell different themes and things based on various games and different apps. I think that would actually be pretty cool, and you could, like, change it every once in a while, or add ones for specific games. So if you're playing, like, a bunch of retro games, it won't cause burn-in from that same border, like, at all times. So yeah, I really hope they fix that in the future. Like, it's been 6 years since the Nintendo Switch Online was, like, first kind of a thing, and they still haven't fixed that, which is crazy. But another random thing that I thought of recently that I thought would be pretty cool are home menu shortcuts. Like, allow people to create icons of specific games so they don't have to go through the app every time to play a certain game. I think that would actually be pretty cool, and I think there's probably a way of implementing it onto, like, the Switch's operating system. Since, like, when you're playing a game on Switch Online, like, it shows that specific game that you're playing on your friends list, even when you're in the app and everything. It doesn't just show the app, it also shows what specific game you're playing. So I think it would be cool if they kind of used that feature and actually had like a little home menu shortcut thing. So let's say you want to play Earthbound. You don't have to go through the SNES app to like play it and everything. You could just select Earthbound from the home menu and it will take you to, it will open up the SNES app automatically and pull up Earthbound. Like, there's actually already some functionality with like basically opening up specific games from other parts of the Switch's operating system. Like in the Switch Online like app, like that actual app on the home screen, when you do like, there's certain pop-up things for you to do certain missions on there for certain Nintendo Switch Online retro games. And when you select the game, it will open it up in the app. So it's definitely possible to do this, and I think it would be pretty cool. I definitely think that would be a nice feature to have. So another pretty big thing that I really want to see sometime in the future is proper button remapping with the app and the ability to save mappings for certain games. I think it's kind of ridiculous that they don't have it in-app, because the Wii U literally had this feature. Like, the only way to like remap the like buttons on the Joy-Cons or Pro Controller is through the Switch's OS itself, which is kind of weird because like you have to scroll through the menus and everything. I mean, I'm glad that feature was added in one of the updates, but it still makes things a little clunky if you're trying to do it for Switch Online. So I really hope they'll add the feature to actually do it within the app or for specific games. And yeah, and then finally, the ability to turn off the rewind feature. Like, I know you don't like have to use the rewind feature when you're playing some of these like retro games and everything, but you could still, like, some people still like it's hard to kind of avoid sometimes. So I think having the ability like to turn it off completely just makes a lot of sense. But yeah, so finally, there are some other general improvements I want to see with the retro games on Switch Online that I've kind of wanted to discuss here last. And one thing is having a better, more consistent release schedule. Like, actually have a proper roadmap like they did a couple of years ago for the Nintendo 64 games. Like, I know it's kind of fun to have like the games randomly drop on the service, but at the same time, there are also long gaps in between when games are added, and there are also still some services that are in apps that are still pretty lackluster at the moment, like the Game Boy. Like, the Game Boy app definitely needs more games, and it seems like it's been quite a while since they've added the last batch of games onto that service. So it's pretty inconsistent, and I really hope that schedule improves, like with the Switch 2. And another thing is actually testing the games more before they release them, because I feel like a lot of these games were rushed onto the service, especially with the Nintendo 64 library. Like Paper Mario and Ocarina of Time had quite a lot of issues that could have been ironed out through playtesting or just kind of looking for certain bugs within the emulation. Because I feel like, especially when people are paying $50 for the service, people buying the service shouldn't be the playtesters. Nintendo should do it before. It's just absolutely ridiculous that it had so many issues. So I really hope it's the emulation and a lot of the things with the games added are much more polished on the Switch 2. And finally, I want to see them develop and release actual translations for some of these games. There are many games that are just dropped onto Nintendo Switch Online without a proper translation, with the most notable and recent example being Starfy. So, the Starfy games, while you don't necessarily have to know Japanese to enjoy them, it still is there is still a fair amount of text in the game, and I feel like it probably wouldn't have been that hard to translate this, especially since it was added to the $50 expansion pack. Like, I feel like with the profits that Nintendo is earning from the expansion pack, they would probably be able to afford translations for these games. So, it's just kind of ridiculous that they haven't been doing that. And there are also, like, quite a lot of other games that fans are begging to be translated or localized, like Mother 3. And I feel like it's definitely a good possibility if they were to revamp the service to add more translated games. Like, they might not even like have them as a part of like the subscription service. They don't even have to add it as a part of that. If they were to do individual payments for some of these games, I feel like they could possibly do that. Like Mother 3, I mean, yeah, but it would probably be a premium, like maybe like $7.99 or something, compared to like $4.99, like I said earlier, for GBA games. Maybe even like $10 for that. But like, they might not add it to like the actual service, but at least having those games available within the apps would be nice, even if they were purchased separately. But yeah, those are my ideas for how Nintendo could revamp the retro libraries for the Switch 2. There are definitely a lot of things they could improve, so I really hope that they'll make some changes here. But anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Twitter if you want to. Goodbye.